Sure.
Why? My name is John P. and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
I'm addicted to Cheez-Its, thinking I'm always right about everything, but more than anything, I'm an escape artist. I would do whatever I could do to escape this moment right here, right now. And a lot of times that involved drugs, but a lot of times it was golf, food, relationships, sports. That was probably my first addiction, was being addicted to sports. And that was through my dad, another John P. When he died 3 years ago, he had 49 years in the program. And my very best friend just celebrated 40 years in April. But those two people couldn't help me get sober. I first started going to meetings way over 30 years ago, and I've got 44.8 months clean and sober, which I'm really happy about. My sobriety date is January 7, 2019. That's 1,364 days. And in that time, it's one day at a time, but in that time, I've been to 3,763 meetings. And for me, this is based on my dad's definition. A meeting is any two alcoholics getting together and having a resentment to talk about. That's a meeting. You don't even need coffee. But I keep track of those stats because it's my proof and shows my commitment to me. I totally identify with alcoholics, both sides of my family, heavy damage done by drugs and alcohol. And I always knew that was probably in my future. And I used other drugs and other activities to escape that. I did not want to be that drunk. Both my grandmothers would have like competing Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners. We'd have to go to both. And at both, people were crying, doors were slamming. It was not a fun time of the year until it got better when other people died off from their disease. That's what our addiction does to us. My dad would often say things like, he had a world of quotes, cliches. But one of his, I don't want to say it was his favorite, but he said it a lot, was our lives are full of death and dying. And that's really hard to take sometimes. That was usually the justification people have to use, would be the pain they're feeling. And one of the great things about the program that I'm working right now is I can deal with all that stuff. And I've been getting large doses of that lately. But my life has never been better. And what it was like for me, I see one of my former St. Joe's classmates is here. He needs no introduction, but he knows a lot about what my upbringing was like. Easy access to drugs, especially LSD and marijuana, keggers in the Arboretum. That was our lifestyle. I had a lot of friends who were in the CIA. I went to St. Joseph's, CIA, Catholic, Irish, alcoholic. That was sort of how we navigated the world. The night I graduated, I went to St. Joe's, Seattle Prep, eventually the UW, but the night I graduated from Seattle Prep, I went to a Jimi Hendrix concert at the Coliseum, took LSD. And that was like the beginning, that was the high point. And unlike a lot of people, I did not start drinking at an early age. That was probably, I was 17 or 18 at the end of high school. That was when I started drinking. Because again, I did not want to be like the people in my family. I didn't like the taste of alcohol. But when I went away to college, and the first week I was on campus, I was still 17. People were just giving me booze left, right, and center. I totally failed at regulating that. And I had a football scholarship, which I lost after like a season and a half because I was committed to the party. Again, I was escaping the moment. I was not prepared for college or living on my own. I went to the University of Montana to start with. And when I found out they weren't going to make me go to class, I was so happy. The weekend started on Thursday. And again, that type of living was not conducive. And I used to feel a lot of shame and guilt about that. But I can tell now that there was no other way that was going to go any other way when I set foot on campus. I just wasn't mature enough to handle that situation. And I did not want to hear anything. Like I said, one of the things I'm addicted to is I'm right about everything. Because people were warning me, but I didn't want to hear what they were saying, and I didn't pay any attention to it. And when I eventually started going to meetings, I picked Fremont. My best friend had gone there to get sober. When I went, I looked around and said, well, hell, I'm not like these people. I got a car. I got insurance. I got a job. I can hang out here and feel good about me because I'm not as bad as they are. And a couple months in, because I had done some horrifying things, this woman comes up to me and says, you high bottom drunks have a hard time staying sober. And I took that to mean that I could go out for a few more years and I would be okay because I'm not like that. But that was not the case at all. I totally would screw things up. One of my most vivid memories with my dad was I made a horrifying show of cussing somebody out at his dinner party. It was all my parents' friends, and he came and got me out of bed at like 6 in the morning, made me go back and apologize to this woman. And he was driving my car, and so we pull up in front of my house where I was living. I was 20, and he slams on the brake. He's in the middle of lecturing me, and this old Crow bottle comes rolling out from underneath the front seat. And he just like slammed the thing apart, walked away. But he never harangued me, even though I know it broke his heart that my brother and I were like we were. My brother and I, he's a year younger than me. Steve was in his class. And I had an uncle who's a year older than me. And we were really close. We partied together. We all bought Triumph sports cars at the same time. We did everything together. Both those guys are dead. My brother died about 15 years ago, rapid alcoholism. My uncle died about 4 years after that. And that wasn't enough to get me to stop because I was different than them. I did not drink every day like the way they did. I was more of a weekend binge drinker. But I was using some substance every single day. I was living in that isolated, not in touch with reality world, a world of my own choosing. And I don't have to do that anymore. What happened to me was my wife moved out. I was, I think, 68, 67. And my world just was not working anymore. I had a lot of great jobs, but none of my jobs worked out great. I was a newspaper reporter for like 13 years at the Seattle Times, covering the Sonics. It should have been the perfect, and other sports, that should have been the perfect job for me, but it still wasn't enough because they were getting in, covering the Sonics, going to football games. That was getting in the way of my getting high. And if they would just talk faster, I could write this story and get on with what I wanted to do. And that affected my career. I just wasn't able to do things to the best of my ability. I'd have these flashes where things were going great. But they eventually convinced me that I should resign and take this severance package and move on, which I did. And it turned out I went to treatment briefly. I sort of straightened up. I ended up getting, like 6 months later, a better job working at Microsoft in their toy department, video games. And I did that for like 14 years. But even that, towards the end, I was messing that up as well. And I couldn't connect my lifestyle with what was going on. And again, if I'd had a more dramatic things happening, I wasn't crashing cars, I didn't have DUIs, I wasn't getting into fights, I was mostly well loved by my family. I didn't have that dramatic thing that shoved me into a new course of action. I had to stumble onto it. I've heard somebody, I'm in Marijuana Anonymous as well, and they always say things like, well, if you're taking drugs or alcohol, your house catches on fire. When you're smoking marijuana, the termites get it. So it's a little bit slower process, but we end up in the same place. I was just totally morally spent when I got here. The last denouement was I went to the Rose Bowl 2018 season with 3 friends of mine. We started off in Las Vegas, ended up in LA. And I brought them with me so I could see what real drunks look like. And we were all just miserable. I was having no fun. And I couldn't deny any longer that my life was ruined. And I was a writer. I couldn't even read at the end. And I wanted to write again. So I got to that point. After that trip, I came back. It still took like 5 days before I knew I had to go back to AA. And my biggest problems with AA, I went to meetings. I love the stories. I totally identify with the people, but I would not do the higher power thing. That's from St. Joe's. I blame them for that. I did not want to sponsor. And I never wanted to go anywhere near the steps. I knew so much about AA. I used to read my dad's books. He used to talk about it constantly, but I did not want to pay the price for admission here. I was an AA enthusiast. Like I said, I loved the meetings, but I was not a member until recently, a full-fledged member. And it has just been eye-opening for me. I'm the guy they're talking about when they say half measures. I always want maximum results for the minimum amount of effort. And that just doesn't work in this world. My favorite AA book, is not an AA approved literature, is A New Pair of Glasses, where Chuck C talks about the fact that we have to do the steps to the best of our ability. And he promises, this is a Chuck C promise, that if we do that, we're not going to have cravings. We're going to be happy, joyous, and free. And I love that line of his, where we do this for free, we do it for fun. I never wanted to have sponsees. They can get their own way to this. But again, it's just changed my life so much to have people asking me questions or suggestions, whatever you want to call it, to be helpful to other people helps me. I went to this meeting, Sober Diversity. There were like 5 other people there besides me. It was just an extraordinary meeting. We all were like crying and laughing, just 6 people there. And this is the night after I go to Empire Way, where we had over 100. One of my other home groups is Magnolia, where we have over 200. But this little tiny, teeny meeting, where I only knew 2 of the other people, we were sharing things there that I swore I would never, ever talk about. And this is just at a regular hour-long meeting. And the program is just, so I can't even describe how it's changed me, but my reading, I like to read, and somebody sent me this morning, one of my gratitude list people, the humility prayer. I had never read this before. Lord, I am far too much influenced by what people think of me, which means that I am always pretending to be either richer or smarter or nicer than I really am. Please prevent me from trying to always to attract attention. Don't let my glasses are broken. Don't let me gloat over praise on the one hand and be dismayed by criticism on the other. Nor let me waste time weaving imaginary situations in which the heroic, charming, witty person is myself. Show me how to be humble of heart like you. And at the beginning of this year, I was having some real difficulties. I was having a relationship end, and then 2 of my friends were diagnosed with terminal illnesses. And I was just distraught. So I go to my sponsor, which is something I'm not used to doing, asking for help. And he goes, well, you need to pray and do the steps. And I'm like, no, that's not the answer. And I asked a couple other people in the program, and they told me the very same thing. So I had to try it. And lo and behold, it actually worked. I stopped obsessing about things I couldn't control. I started feeling better about life. I wouldn't say I was happy, but I was definitely not down in the dumps. And it's just gotten better since then. I was at a meeting at Empire Way about the end of February, where a family showed up, and 3 days after their son had died of a drug overdose. And they were cheering people in the meeting. Now, people in the meeting knew this guy. He'd been in and out of the program for years. But instead of hiding out like I would have done in that situation. They were at a meeting showing people, for me anyway, what it looks like to live in the solution. And I've been just noticing that more and more and more these days. Yesterday, the son of a really good friend of mine, this family that their son went to school with my son, he died after a year and a half battle with cancer. And they showed so much grace and love for their friends and neighbors as well as their son that I just found it so humbling, because I'm complaining about, like, my house is getting remodeled right now and I'm upset there's dust everywhere and that I don't have a sink and I don't have a stove. And really not very hard issues. And without the program, I wouldn't be feeling that way. I'd be on the pity pot. I was a master of that. That's why I love step 4 so much. I could dwell on all my stuff, luxuriate in my own misery. That was one of my pastimes. That's one of my character defects. And to have to get out of that and recognize that I control a lot of how I feel about things. And one of the things I'm really starting to feel good about is Rule 62. I need to adopt that way more often than I haven't. And if you don't know, Rule 62 is don't take yourself so damn seriously. And one of my wife's favorite stories is when she told me one time, "Peeps, you're funny, but you ain't fun." And I think about that all the time because I strive to be more of a fun, caring person. One of the benefits I've gotten is my relationship with my son. He's 30 years old. And he knows he knows what I'm going to say before I open my mouth. So I've learned to not open my mouth so much. And our relationship has gotten better. He actually asks me questions these days. But that wasn't always the case. I was always, quick to find fault, quick to point out where I think he should be going, what he should be doing. And he's one of those people, like my mom, who's 90. They teach me every day I cannot control people, places, and things. And I still want to. That's one of my character defects. But I'm much happier when I don't do that. And again, that's my natural instinct, is to try to be in control. And I'm learning that I'm in control of nothing. When I was 6 years old, I was in a car accident with my grandmother, my mom's mother, and her husband. And I was 6, sitting between them in the front seat of the car, reading a magazine. I hear my grandmother go, "Dan, look out." And I look up and there's a telephone pole, like about where Chuck is for me right now. And this car's going 35 miles an hour. And all I had time to do was this. And I got scars here and there. They both got thrown from the vehicle. And normally my brother would have been in the car with us. He wasn't that day. I think he was sick. And we'd have been playing in the back seat. And who knows what would have happened to us if that had happened. But that just shows you how life can be. I'm still here, relatively intact. And there's nothing I did. I mean, I did flinch, but I'm constantly amazed by how close calls I've had. In one of my other lives, I was a state patrol cadet. And they used to put us, I wasn't a trooper, but they would put us in cars to drive around on holiday weekends. So it looked like there were more cars on the road than there were. And I couldn't even wait to get off work to start getting high. In the patrol car, in my uniform, I'm blowing up a doobie. And then I get a call from the lieutenant to meet him someplace. I'm like Mr. Dithers trying to get there. I actually drove my car out into traffic, and luckily the semi didn't hit me. Again, nothing I could control. So the whole idea of a higher power was so hard for me. I did not want to have anything to do with that. It's like magic. Some little old white guy above the clouds looking down is going to help me. And that's not how I see it now. My first thing to get step 3, there's a guy named Bill Derrick. I think he lives in Vegas. He had a tape. And he said, to get this program, we have to do things we don't believe in. And that was something I could never do in anything. I had to be convinced that this was going to work for me. And when I heard that talk, I was driving to a meeting, and then I figured out I only had to do that today. If I do the belief in God today, I'll make it to the end of today, and tomorrow I can become a pagan or a heathen or whatever. But for today, I'm going to believe in the program. And my idea, I can't really define what my higher power is, but it's my relationship to it is like Mount Rainier. Most days I can't see it, but I know it's there. Other days, there's just no denying that that mountain's there and it's close to me, that it helps me. And I'm just so grateful that I have just a little bit of flexibility in my soul to try new things. That's been one of my, lately, things that I'm saying no to, I make a point of trying them. I grew up for years and years, I would not eat oysters on the half shell. I would not eat mushrooms, all these little childhood picadillos. So I do those things now, and I owe that to the program. The program has really changed me that way. And she put this thing like 35 minutes. Uh-oh. I think I stopped it.
Yeah, 10 more minutes.
Thank you. But I was a kid at St. Joe's. I once got in trouble for pretending I was using Oreo cookies as a host and giving them to some of my friends after dunking them in milk. I was a blasphemer. I would be at the J&M Cafe daring God to strike me with a lightning bolt. And it sort of feels like I'm a hypocrite because now I totally advocate the higher power making the change for me. I could not stay sober on my own. That first day I went, January 7th, I woke up again really early when I was having that debate. Do I go to Uncle Ike's or do I go to a meeting? And I got down on a knee and asked for help. I couldn't even say the word God. I said, please help me. And then, like, my next thought was to go to this meeting that I knew started at 6:30 in the morning. Tukwila Early Birds down in Renton. And I went to that meeting for at least 75, 80 days in a row. It just got me out of my house and out of my head because that's a really scary place for me to be. I can justify almost anything. My favorite line in the big book still is on page 5, where Dr. Bill says Lois was believing him again. The next paragraph begins with, but gradually things got worse. And that's how it always would be for me. I would get little bits of sobriety, 3 months, 6 months. One time I had over a year, but I was not using the program the way it's written. I did not want to have a higher power. I did not want to do the steps. And I was really lucky to have the sponsor I had. I say it was luck because he came up to me and offered to be my sponsor. And in that moment, I could not say no, although I'm thinking I can fire this guy later. But that was over 9 years ago. I had a year and a half in 2014 and 2015. And I got to the beginning of step 9. And then I got a job offer to be an editor, writer for this website called marijuana.com. And it was for a big pile of money. And my wife found out about it. And so I go to my sponsor, I'm telling him about it. He goes and gets his sponsor, and they're both trying to talk me out of it. But I could tell they knew I was not going to have anything to do with that. And I lasted a little over a month at that job, staying sober. And I went to a conference in Denver, and I was watching these people drink old fashions. And that's what started me back. I had 2 old fashions that night. Didn't feel drunk, but the next day I was completely off the rails. Bottle of Bud in one hand and a pipe with Bud in it in the other. And it took me over 3 years before I was able to come back and do the program the way it's written. But when I did, the good news was when I came back, I was all business. I do take this program very seriously. It is a matter of life and death. I've been thinking a lot about my brother lately. He just couldn't do the program. He was in treatment over 5 times, that I know, at least 5 times. And I think it was more. But he would not do AA at all. And me, I would go to the meetings mostly to keep my wife quiet. And I like the cookies. And I would go, and as soon as the wolf was no longer at the door, I would start feeling comfortable, and maybe I can think about stuff again, that I might have good ideas. And lately, I've been calling my sponsor more than when I started, because I still have all these fantastic, totally crazy ideas that I at least now will check with somebody before I do them. A few weeks ago, it was about a month ago, I wrote this text to a friend of mine, a little bit hot, and I was like, I thought about it for over half an hour before I hit the send button, which was like, stupid. And when I told him about that, he just couldn't stop laughing, and he still reminds me of it. But again, asking for help was something I never, ever wanted to do, to admit that I was wrong or didn't have an answer to something. And I've learned that that is a sign of strength instead of a sign of weakness. And I mean, I ask my son for help with stuff now, especially with technology devices. Like we have this new fan that I couldn't figure out how to work. The on and off switch is about this big in front of me, but it wasn't what I was looking for. I'm looking behind it, and I had to finally ask for help. And it is a difference maker in all the best senses of the word. And I have just a ton of service commitments in addition to the one here. I'm currently the secretary at Empire Way, which is really nice because I get a lot of help even when I don't ask for it from the people there. And I'm part of, I have service work at Empire, Magnolia Speakers Meeting, and as well as this other really small meeting called Holly Court. But I need all of that help. I don't know which part of my services work that I would give up, because right now it's all working really well for me. And there's times when I don't want to have it work. I want to go golf or do something, but I'm afraid to make any of those kind of changes right now, just because things are going so well for me. At the end of August, my mom had brain surgery, and 4 days later, my ex-mother-in-law fell, hit her head, never regained consciousness. Mm-hmm. And two things like that happening to me would have sent me to the hills before. And yet now I'm able to be of service to people in my family. I wouldn't, again, I'm not happy, but I am pleased that I don't use my old habits anymore today. Who knows what will happen next week? This house remodel thing has got me really stymied. But again, I owe it all to forces beyond my control. I don't have any answers. I have to ask for help constantly. And that's all. Can you let me off the last 3 minutes? Okay. Thanks for letting me be here. I really appreciate that I had this opportunity. Thank you.